We humans are social creatures. We love to communicate. We love to connect. What we get really passionate about, the things that make our hearts sing, are the things that are our micro niche. I'm past the niche. I'm into the micro niche. For example, sports. Sports is a big niche. Baseball is a small niche-ish, under niche that is baseball. My friend Joe is a huge baseball fan. He's one of those people that every analogy he comes up with has something to do with baseball. It's amazing. But he's so passionate about baseball, he's also passionate about pitching and the art of pitching and the strategy of pitching, and then the great pitches, such as the curveball and the slider and the cutter. How do you do those? In fact, his favorite pitch is the knuckleball. He even has a favorite knuckleballer, Tim Wakefield. This is his micro niche. He would think that there can't possibly be that many people that are this passionate about the knuckleballer. But there are. They're in his micro niche. He just has to be able to find them. What makes being in a micro niche so much fun is it's like being at a party with all of our favorite people. We're more engaged, we're more enthusiastic, we're more interested, and we're more interesting. It's one of the great things about being in a micro niche, is that it allows you to connect with people. It gives you inclusive exclusivity. It's inclusive because not everybody can be in your micro niche, but not everybody wants to be in your micro niche. That's why it's exclusive. So my friend Paul and I went to a conference a few months ago. It was in our micro niche. Long night of travel before. We get there in the morning. We were gonna need to kick this off right with coffee. And we spot Adam. Adam has a cup of coffee in his hand. He can help us. He knows where the coffee is. We go over, talk to Adam. He tells us where the coffee is. It was down an escalator. It was kind of a complicated process. I went to get the coffee because Paul and Adam had already started to connect. By the time they get back, Paul and Adam are laughing like old friends. In fact, by the end of the conference, they were like buddies. They just clicked. So much so that on the way to the airport, Paul says to me, I have no idea why, but Adam and I really connected this weekend. He's a great guy. Paul and Adam are 20 years apart in age. They come from different backgrounds, live in different time zones, work in completely different industries. But after a weekend immersed in their micro niche, they connected. Why is that? It's because they're predisposed to connect. They're in their micro niche. So how do you get from niche to micro niche? Well, let's define a niche. A niche is a position suitable for a person or a market segment. It's a fit. An example of a fit would be us TEDsters. We choose to be here because we enjoy the TED experience. But to get from a niche to a micro niche, we need to get nichier. Speaking of TEDsters, thank you, Erin McKeon, for her TED talk about making up words, because I've gotten pretty attached to nichier. But to get from the niche to the micro niche, there's no science to it. In the baseball example, it took 5 layers. But for you, it might take 2 or 6 or 10. You decide what feels niche-y enough. It's a personal choice based on your passion. In fact, the cool effect that has is that what the micro niche lacks in size, it more than makes up for in personality, because it's your micro niche, it's your passion. So now you've chosen your micro niche. How do you find a micro niche? How do you find these people? Well, the good news is micro niches have been around for a long time. You'll find thousands of them online. You'll find them in Yahoo groups and LinkedIn groups, Twitter lists. This concept isn't new. What's a challenge is connecting with the people in your micro niche. And I found one of the best ways to connect with the people in my micro niche is through the relatively new medium of podcasting. Podcasting is making the micro niche mighty. For those of you who don't know what podcasting is, we'll back up for a second. Podcasting is syndicated on-demand content that is available mostly for free. Let me unpack that for you a bit. Syndicated, meaning it is posted in one place. The official term is hosted. And then it can be accessed by anyone who wants to download it. Episodic, meaning that it is repeated. It's daily, weekly, monthly. It comes out in episodes. And on demand, meaning that it downloads to your device. It downloads to your individual device and you can listen to it at your leisure. Podcasting gives you an opening to a world of content that you might not have even known about. How big of a world? Just on iTunes, there are over 250,000 podcasts. Many of them are micro-niched. They're already there. Back in 2009, there were 25 million podcasts downloaded every month. By 2014, that jumped to 75 million. It's already emerging. Podcasting's technically been around for, you can technically say about 10 years, since 2005. It's already emerging, yet only about 10% of the US population listens to podcasts on a regular basis, a weekly basis. We're just getting warmed up. Let me give you some examples of what micro-niche podcasts look like. Here's a daily podcast about horses. Every day, this is a talk show about horses. There's a podcast called The Knitting Pipeline. It's not just about knitting, it also mixes in a Celtic flair because they also talk about bagpiping. There are 25 knitting podcasts, but there's only one, as far as I can tell, that actually mixes in a Celtic flair. There are podcasts about sea kayaking. There are podcasts about how to coach children in youth sports. There's The Beekeeper's Corner, which is about backyard beekeeping. And then there's Chasing Tone, which is specifically for electric guitar players who want to make their electric guitars sound awesome. These are just a few that are already out there. So how do you get these? Again, you can get them on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, even in your car. For example, here are some of the apps that you can use. The ones on this side are free. The ones on this side, not free, but they're less than $5. In fact, the one up in the corner, the purple one, that's the Apple Podcast app. It's already on your phone. If you have an iPhone, you have that app. You already have access to all 250,000 and counting podcasts. And once you go into these apps and you search for your passion, your micro niche, all you need to do is subscribe. Click the subscribe button, and these podcasts will download to your device automatically. Again, mostly for free. And another really cool effect of podcasting is that most people, when they come to podcasting, they don't just listen to one. They listen to 6, actually, on average, because you find one on beekeeping, and you find one on history, and you find one on sports. And because of that, there's a rising tide that's lifting all podcasts. And the cool effect that has is that rising tide is also lifting all micro niches because they're on these podcasts. Podcasting is making the micro niches mighty. So once you've now found your micro niche and you found your podcast, how do you connect with these people that are in your micro niche? Podcasting is so personal because you're listening to voice, you're talking, you're getting to know these people. So the behavior that results is, yes, there are online forums, those kind of things, but there are also conferences. There are podcast cruises. There are meetups right here in our local area for podcasts. Podcasting is making the micro niche mighty. I came to my idea to have a podcast out of frustration. My niche is the fascinating world of government contracting. I get that reaction a lot, by the way. I knew that there were people that I could help. I knew that the knowledge that I spent 16 years on the government side of government contracting. I was what is called a contracting officer. That's somebody who signs contracts on behalf of the US government. That's my micro niche. And I knew there were people that were interested in it, but when you walk into a room like this, for example, and you mention government contracting, most people's instinct is to look for an exit to the conversation because it's a micro niche. It's not for everybody. But I found that if I could just find these people and connect with them, I could help them. I could help make government contracting better, one contract at a time. And the Contracting Officer Podcast was born. Quite possibly the most boring podcast ever, unless you're in our micro niche. The vast majority of you would never listen to this podcast, and that's okay. Because I could be cynical and say, well, the very small number of people who would listen to this is discouraging, or I could consider that the very small number of people who are looking for the information we provide, they are thrilled when they find our podcast. I know they're thrilled because they send us messages like this. This podcast is awesome. Not something you probably would have used for our podcast unless you're in our micro niche. Never knew it existed. We'll definitely tune in for future podcasts. And here's the coolest part. I bet almost every micro niched podcast is getting emails just like this. Podcasting is making the micro niche mighty. There are 1,228 people on average who download our episodes every week. That's more people than would fit in this theater. I called and checked to be sure, by the way. With podcasting, I'm able to reach hundreds of people who are passionate about government contracting just like I am. Under the old model of walking around one by one, I never would have found them. Podcasting is making my micro niche mighty. So what is your micro niche? With 250,000 podcasts and counting, I bet there's a podcast out there that already is for your micro niche. And if there isn't, what if you created it? Even better, what if there already is and you still created one? Because remember, the podcast is a rising tide. So more podcasts are driving more people to podcasting. And to be a podcaster, all you really need is a good microphone and a computer with the ability to record your voice. It's gotten easier over time. I must admit, we're pretty embarrassed by our first few episodes. But to borrow some insight from Reid Hoffman, if you're not embarrassed by the first version you put out, you waited too long to launch. Podcasting is making the micro niche mighty. I'll leave you with a final story. I was driving my daughter to school one day, and she says from the back seat, "Hey, Daddy, can I listen to your podcast?" I said, "Sure." I think she wouldn't be that interested, but sure. I hear her sifting around, and I say, "Oh, it's going to be look for the podcast app on your iPad." She is looking for it, and then she says, "Oh, here it is. It's in my boring box." I said, "What's your boring box?" She says, "Oh, that's the box I created on my iPad for the apps that I didn't know what to do with." Don't overlook the podcast app that might be in your boring box. Use podcasting to connect with your micro niche today. Thank you very much.